At our invitation, Mayor Amilcar of Huamanga, Peru, a fervent believer in catching kids young, has already traveled across Peru from the Andes to the Amazon, seeing the effects on children of poverty and violence. Now, to find some answers, he journeys on to Brazil, Latin America's biggest and richest country, and to the seaport of Sao Luis.
I have traveled thousands of kilometers, from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, to the other side of South America, to learn how they treat their children here. How children are perceived in this society. I want to talk to families here who might have a different vision of development, sustainable human development, one fair for all. That's what I want to learn in this country.
Eso quiero aprender en este país.
The old city center of Sao Luis in the northeast of Brazil is a place of mystery. To Amilcar Huancahuari, the visiting mayor from Peru, it's like a magical realist novel. Colonial buildings trapped in time. And the mayor has discovered something even more amazing. For Sao Luis still has an emperor and an empress. Amilcar attending a feast in their honor. Their Excellencies' ages: Christopher is 11. And Janena, 9. In the Liberdade neighborhood close by, Amilcar had already learnt how the Mina congregation venerates children. He'd visited the home of the Mina priest who helped select this year's emperor. Afro-Catholicism regarding childhood as holy and recognizing it's at risk.
Look, this is the Liberdade community. The name of the community is Freedom. Today it's become a community full of risks. But we are uniting forces to take young people away from crime and from drugs.
The emperor has no official role, but that doesn't stop him dreaming.
If you really were an emperor, what would you like to do?
Help people. By taking them off the streets. By giving them a better life.
The Emperor and Empress are on their way to Sunday service, along with their subjects. They're not the only Christians to tap into ancient beliefs in Brazil's northeast. Amilcar wants to know more. What's the reality behind this vision of childhood? Amilcar had visited the Empress at home. He'd had a sneak preview of that dress. And of the Empress's manifesto.
Teach mothers that they should not abandon their children. Make them work, not hate them, not mistreat them. I think that it's because when you hit them, the child learns that and does it with their own children.
aqui com o filho.
It's not just religion that's behind Janena's insights. Her mother, Claudia, is an anthropologist who's worked with the Brazilian government. She believes there's a lesson in her own story.
My family was very poor. I went to study so that I could have a better life. I did not try to steal. I had many friends who died in the hands of the police, died because they used drugs. Not me. I wanted a different life. So I want to show Janaína where her family comes from. Does she have a better life today than I did? A more structured life. She does.
Well, Claudia has explained that violence can indeed be connected to poverty, but not necessarily so. Violence interacts with poverty. That is, you can be poor, but you can construct families that are not violent. That depends on how you work with the family, how you educate a child right from the earliest age.
The Emperor, Empress and their entourage arrive in church. It's the festival of the Holy Spirit. And it's hot inside. But these children are protected from the heat on the streets.
When a child gets closer to the church, that child will find it easier to stay away from things like drugs, like alcohol, like stealing.
But staying away from stealing isn't so easy.
While we were about to leave the churchgoers were robbed by armed men. This is profoundly worrisome because the children are not only exposed to this situation, but they also live permanently with acts of violence like this. What can we expect from children exposed permanently to situations of violence?
2 years ago, we investigated Amilcar's fears about children and violence. For him, it's personal. Huamanga racked by political violence in the 80s. We learned the mayor's right. Babies from loving, stimulating and peaceful homes learning far earlier than we once thought. But science showing children's brains are also uniquely vulnerable to violence and neglect.
There's no question at all, that we're learning more and more about how the early foundations for learning and physical and mental health and behavioral regulation, which includes the possibility of violent behavior later on, the foundations are built in early childhood.
Brazil says early child development is a priority. Amilcar wants to know if anything's already working in a country where violence can be endemic. The fishing village of Guarapiranga, on the edge of Sao Luis. Amilcar's heard of a remarkable experiment here. Jacinte, mother of Cristiane, scrapes a living from the sea.
Sometimes you get enough to sell, so we can buy other food, like the rice and beans. But sometimes we have to hustle a living some way, because just fishing is not enough to support our family.
Children here attend the local state school. To Amilcar, these lessons don't exactly look experimental. But these kids are not just learning by rote. They're learning how to act out their frustrations, like the bus that never turns up.
They are going to do a little theater sketch about the bus, the difficulty it has reaching these communities.
It's become a ballet class, an introduction to a rich man's art form.
They are very motivated. They are really enthusiastic, really excited. It's all they talk about. Ballet, ballet, ballet.
These are the children of fishermen, of security guards, and of the unemployed. Elite art for the socially excluded.
What changes have you noticed in your daughters after they started ballet?
If they don't have an activity like this, they can lose interest in their studies, get pregnant early, even in adolescence. So the ballet prevents that. They start searching for a better way of spending their energy. It helps them learn, you understand?
They are more confident. Now they believe in themselves more.
Amilcar believes these ballet classes, hidden away in Guarapiranga, are a revolution.
Their activity they are doing with the children between 5 and 12 years old is really something that breaks with all the schemes I've seen anywhere until now. There are girls and boys that are dedicating themselves to ballet, an activity almost unknown in a rural community like this one, Guarapiranga. What I've been able to see is that these boys and these girls are growing up with a different way of thinking. They are growing up with a different mentality.
Sao Luis, child emperors, ghetto girls turned government advisors, child ballet. Magic enough, but time for realism.
I think that the kids have better opportunities here, even though they live in poverty. They have more support, but I still think it's not enough.
What Amilcar really wants to take back to the Andes, a whole new approach to learning. So his Brazilian journey now takes him from Sao Luis to Fortaleza. And then inland to the hills of Sierra State and Araucaiaba. Amilcar's heard Araucaiaba is doing what he's trying to do in Peru, and start early. The idea? Learn in the playground, not just the classroom. Girls learn about winning. Kids about concentrating. And homemaking. And they all still spend the afternoon in class.
If all this wasn't here, they'd be doing something else, like drinking and drugs, legal and illegal. And violence. If it wasn't for this play center, there would be even more.
It's not just about keeping kids off the streets. Chaos in the playpen? Not really. It's carefully designed to encourage social values.
This is not individual work. They journal in groups. The idea is to improve the socialization of the group.
Beyond this oasis of play, the reality of poverty.
Hola. 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 Hola, ¿cómo estás?
The toys have been brought here by specially trained play assistants. Their job, to show children and mothers how to play.
Better coordination, better perception of things. They have learned how to organize themselves better and interact with the toys. They have really come on a long way with this project.
But this is a poor town, and funds are limited. These play sessions, just 30 minutes a fortnight. Then the toys are taken away.
Of course, in the beginning of the project, she wanted to keep the toys. But we can't. We have to take them away. We have to play with other children too. And we would say, another day, when I come back to visit, I'll bring the toys back. Then in the beginning they cried, and when we see something like that, it touches your heart, because we have to take the toy away. The toy is not staying in their homes, right?
Amilcar's heard the government is helping poor families here and right across Brazil, not with toys, but cash. To find out more, he calls on a local family he selects at random. They're a little surprised to receive a mayor from Peru, but Huamanga and Francisco, most hospitable.
How do you support your family?
We get assistance from, amongst other things, we get assistance from Bolsa Escola. You know, the Bolsa Familia.
So tell me about Bolsa Familia. How does it work?
Well, I receive 160 reais. I used to receive 130, then there was an increase, right? It went up 30 to 160. And then I can buy things for lessons, the school uniforms, the notebooks, pencils, and now we have to buy the shoes and the uniform.
A son sleeping after school and a teenage daughter diagnosed by Amilcar, who's a surgeon, with a benign lump. To help pay for basic needs, the family get monthly government cash handouts. The nationwide scheme, Bolsa Familia, previously Bolsa Escolar, the government's main weapon against child poverty. One condition, children go to school.
We don't have anything to sell, to pay for what we bought, so we need to find exactly the right amount of money. It's really useful. Holy Mary, thank God for the Bolsa Familia.
Last stop in Araucaba, the mayor behind all this, lawyer Marilena. Sundown on her ranch. Two mayors, Peruvian and Brazilian, with a common mission to effect change by starting young.
Excelente, excelente. Te felicito, Marilena.
It's very good what you've done. I have learned a lot in your city. There were things that I hadn't seen before I came here. I saw them and I learned a lot. So I will copy much of what you have done. I will copy it in Peru.
I will go there too and copy what you are doing.
I'll invite you that you can go there and see what we are doing too.
From the hills around Fortaleza to the drug favelas of Rio de Janeiro. Rio is preparing for the Olympics and for the Football World Cup. But swathes of this beautiful city are still lawless. Amilcar wants to visit the Candelaria Church. In 1993, 8 street children were shot dead here by renegade police.
Visitar la iglesia de la Candelaria me produjo.
Visiting the Candelaria Church caused a deep pain in my soul. Imagine that those innocent children, victims of violence, abandoned by society and their families, were also victims of the forces of order, of the police. In their hands, they got nothing but death. An absurd death, an innocent death that should never happen again.
Que no debe volver a suscitarse.
In the north of Rio, over 100,000 people live in the Complexo de Mare favela. Kids here quick to say why they can be slow to learn.
The main difficulty for children is the drug traffic in the favela. It stops us learning properly, because it's like this. You go out in the street and you run the risk of getting shot at any moment.
Yvonne Bezerra de Mello was so moved by the Candelaria massacre, she devoted herself to helping street kids here. She started a new kind of schooling, bringing the playground into the classroom, as Amilcar's about to discover.
Okay, so let's go. Bom dia, japonês.
In this history class, the first 15 minutes, warming up. Talk first, write later.
The kids have to learn orally first. They have to understand.
How much time do they have for this? For oral learning?
For oral learning, maybe 35 to 40 minutes. This is a history class, so the teacher, in the first 15 minutes, will only do oral learning.
Ballet here too. Brazilian ballet, capoeira.
Singing history, because it's the best way to remember things.
Mental exercises too, memorizing numbers.
911-235-18
And learning to lead.
Once a month, the children are the teachers.
Bom dia em japonês.
Once they're warmed up, they're ready to write. But there's a reminder of why Yvonne believes a new approach is needed. Children still the victims of violence, in this case, quite random.
I got shot.
You got shot? And how? What were you doing? Where were you?
I was at home on the balcony. I thought I was going to die. It's hurt a lot and it stings.
Yvonne's ideas for a more active, participatory child education are influencing many schools in Rio. She says they're grounded in the scientific discoveries that inspired Amilcar's journey.
When a child is under stress, their cognitive capacity to think declines. This is proved by neuroscience. All scientists know it. So I believe governments who know this have to take charge and change the children's schooling. Yes, change the old system, because it excludes these children, just like you do,
Is Yvonne's enthusiasm really justified by the scientific evidence? In the hills of Rio's Santa Teresa, where Amilcar's staying, he's about to meet Yvonne's advisor, Dr. Evelyn Eisenstein. She believes in new teaching methods that counteract the effects of stress and violence, which can otherwise physically alter the way young brains work.
Children are not mini adults. Their brains are developing all the time, and the synapses are forming. And we have several hormones that are doing their work, mainly what we call corticotropin. So, when a child experiences fear, or is scared, or feels hungry, the child reacts producing various hormones that will alter the brain structure. And then there will be repercussions for the rest of the lives of these children.
What Amilcar wants to know, why the need to start young isn't more of a public issue.
Maybe because the children don't vote, I don't know. But it is important that we now have these movements towards social rights. It's important that governments have the political will. We already have the Convention on the Rights of the Child for more than 20 years. These rights have to be transformed into public policy.
From Rio, Amilcar flies to Brasilia, the capital, where public policy is made. Its modernist buildings represent a powerful centralist state tradition in Brazil. Brazil's government has included kindergartens and fighting child labour in its anti-poverty programme. Amilcar wants to know, are there enough resources? The new Human Rights Minister did her thesis on children and violence.
É muito duro ainda apresentarmos números e cifras totalizadoras.
It is still very hard to present finalized numbers and price quotes, but we know that today we have around 20 million children between 0 and 6 years old. And we know most of them are among the poorer families. So all the policies that are focused on assisting the poorest have to be designed primarily for the care of the child.
Prioritariamente para o cuidado com as crianças.
What has impressed me the most in this visit to Brazil is that, yes, there are experiences and models that can work for the children. You can rescue a child that has been violated, that has been the victim of mistreatment. There is a way of doing it that works, and this will enable me to do it in my home in Huamanga, in Ayacucho. We can find a way to rescue the children who have been victims of social, political, and family violence, and give them opportunities for their development, give them opportunities for their full growth. Without a doubt, this job is a task we will begin in Ayacucho.
Este trabajo es una tarea que iniciaremos en Ayacucho.
Back in Sao Luis, Christopher and Janena prepare to hand over their crowns. Next year's Emperor and Empress already chosen. There's a lot to be done to make the reality in Brazil match the Mina ideal. But as he takes his leave, the mayor from Peru wishes them well.
To the child Empress and the child Emperor, I want to wish that this love that they have been given lasts forever, and that somehow they can learn and give this love to the children of their people, of Brazil, and of the whole world.
To find out more about early child development in Latin America and globally, visit our website, tve.org/lifeonline.